to the US, new stats from the CBSA show it's a two-way problem. In the last 2 years, there's been a spike of drugs and guns flowing from the US into Canada.
Usua ha ATM Max. Mpanyinfo se ade kyen na se nti asem foforo a akyese ade enya nkyenye. Ade kyen so de na enye denya asem foforo na ebesisi ewo enkrofo amaman so. Enti madu katafa etosumi na katafa etosumi no ya mbe eba besom ayi obi man so asem ne asisi ne ya ni gye ne ya reho na mede ba besom. Enti ne ameka ne se nya bre na tie ne asisi obi man so. Ne ya ni gye ene ne ya reho ena TM Tamax me de ba besumo nkofo aman so amanfo ebufa so omu hu ne omonye omoka mu ato omo dwajo ena obi so no wo adigi mu no eno ena me de ba besumo e wo ha dise won fa wa gwenchire emaya obutim de wa gwenchire ayede aba uti na gwenchire aba osi TM Tamax wa me hu adwimi hwe enye ne obi hu ne asoso kin wo yi ena me de ba besumo nti se won fa wa gwenchire emaya obutim de wa gwenchire ayede aba na wa share video no so no na fofo anything enye bi ahwe amomo so mo ne asisi ewo obi man so ne ye ni gene ne yare ho subscribe to YouTube channel no say ne a me ye no hono me ya adwia na subscribe to YouTube channel no say ne be ya notification bi e be bia no video bi a me upload bia no so be den obenya bi na wa hwe na obe the first person so obenya bia de na hwe disa wa ye crowd dia yonko ne konko hwe ne asisi ewo obi man so.
We're tracking what's happening on the border. The government announced a $1.3 billion border security upgrade. And we're zeroing in on the most visible and heavily promoted part of this plan, these two Blackhawks, that cost over $5 million to lease. All that in response to Donald Trump's tariff threats.
These investments are making a strong border even stronger.
It all sounds good, but what's actually being done?
There is a degree of border security theater here.
The RCMP said at the outset, to protect operational integrity, it can't provide more specific information. So we decided to try to find out ourselves, logging every takeoff and landing that we could see over the first 6 weeks of their deployment. Here's what we found. This is Canada's border with the US, the longest undefended border in the world. Using flight tracking website ADSB Exchange, we can see since patrolling officially began on January 17th, nearly 70 flights, most with multiple stops on the way, often along the border. The two Blackhawks were deployed in Quebec, Manitoba, New Brunswick, Ontario, Alberta, and British Columbia. We know their ID because we can see this code in promotional videos. We have the full route for some of these Blackhawk flights. For example, this one in Quebec on January 18th. Here's what that looked like. You can see it flying along the border, making loops around points of interest, like the Blackpool border crossing in Quebec, kilometers from Roxham Road. For other flights, we can only see their takeoffs and landings. We excluded flights that weren't along the border or when there wasn't enough data. But that still lets us put together a rough picture of what's happening. So in Quebec, on this stretch of border here, we counted 23 flights since January 18th, usually lasting around 5 hours, mostly in the daytime. In Manitoba, flight tracking data is spottier, so we have less data, but we can basically see the same pattern. Same for BC. We also spotted deployments in New Brunswick, Ontario, and Alberta. So that's what we can see is happening. But we had another question. Is this actually doing anything? For weeks, we asked the RCMP about our findings. They wouldn't share specifics, only saying the Blackhawks give the force a rapid response capability. But we couldn't see that. Based on all the flights we tracked, the Blackhawks were in the air for hours at a time, almost daily, patrolling stretches of border. We also asked, have these Blackhawks been involved in any arrests or seizures over the past few weeks? Again, we didn't get any information. Until February 25th, they revealed that a Blackhawk was used in a border arrest 2 days earlier. It's the only time the Blackhawks have been used in this way in 6 weeks of near daily patrols.
There is a degree of border security theater here. You know, we're putting up hardware into the skies. Blackhawk helicopters, we're promising 24/7 surveillance, and it is designed to appease the United States.
To be clear, there's a lot happening at the border besides Blackhawks. The RCMP already has 6 border helicopters and surveillance planes. That's on top of surveillance towers and drones.
I think if you had asked the RCMP or CBSA for their wish list, my guess is that the helicopters are not among the top 50 or so items that they would have put forward.
While much of the criticism has been about what's been going from Canada to the US, new stats from the CBSA show it's a two-way problem. In the last 2 years, there's been a spike of drugs and guns flowing from the US into Canada. So that's the situation at the border so far. And because this issue isn't going away, we're going to keep tracking it.